everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester, back joining Mike Tagliere for a special episode to quickly react to all the first day free agency noise. Tags, in the past 24 hours, man, I've now recorded a podcast for all three major sports, and today I got to fully enmesh myself in football for the first time in months. It has been so fun.
It is, it's like Christmas Day for me. And I mean, for a few reasons, right? I mean, granted, yesterday was supposed to be the day we were supposed to be hearing a lot about free agents and who's signing where and whatnot. But today was the big day. And I've been up, Bobby, I told you before we started recording, I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, grinding this out because like I went to bed last night. It was like 11 o'clock. And then I woke up it was like 3:55 on my alarm clock. And I felt like I was missing something. Like there was something that would happen that I had missed. So all I did was just take a peek at my phone. And of course I had a million notifications and about Allen Robinson. So naturally that got my excitement up and I couldn't go back to bed at that point. So I've been working ever since and kind of trying to keep up to date with all these free agent, I can't say signings because it's a tamper period, legal tampering period. But at the same time, we know who's going where. We're learning so much. And like I said, it's Christmas morning for me, man.
Tags, you've been living at your keyboard, publishing all kinds of articles as quickly as the news drops. But then he popped into to Slack, which is what we use for our group chat. And he said, man, I just need to get away, go to the gym for a little bit during the eye of the storm. But there was no eye of the storm. The news just kept coming, man. We were actually going to wait until Thursday to record this episode, but we're doing it right now. It's 4 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. So, I mean, if we missed the big Tim Tebow signing with the Dolphins news or any other news on this show, whatever it is, whatever big news pops up, sorry, we're going to have to hit it next episode.
Yeah, if you guys missed that, I mean, we're going to hit on it as we go through, but the Dolphins signing Tim Tebow might be one of their better sightings of free agency
exactly.
so far.
I'm glad you caught that. That's what I was getting at. I don't know what they're doing. We're going to get on that in just a second, but first, Tags, super important question right off the bat. What kind of RX bar did you have when you got back from the gym, man?
I actually have the blueberry ones. Ever since we had as a sponsor back like a couple months ago, I talked a few people into it. My father-in-law ended up ordering some. A few people on Twitter ended up asking me for the discount code and all that fun stuff. So yeah, I definitely like them. And I at first I had the sampler pack where you had all the different flavors, but blueberry is definitely by far my favorite.
Blueberry's definitely the best. It tastes just like candy, man. Today's show is brought to you all by RX Bar. For 25% off your first order, visit rxbar.com/fantasypros and enter the promo code fantasypros during checkout. So, Tags, what do you want to do first, man? Like Danny Amendola and Albert Wilson signing with the Dolphins?
Stop it. You know what I want to talk about. You know exactly what I want to talk about.
Here's what it comes down to, okay? Tags could talk about the Bears for 2 hours. We're not going to let him. I'm giving him 3 minutes. You got 3 minutes, man. Do your rant. Talk about how great the Bears are and everything. I'll bring you back down to earth a little bit, but not too much because I think they're really good too. So go ahead, Tags. 3 minutes, man.
Well, it's been a fun off season being a Bears fan. I mean, I think I can bask in that for once in my lifetime. Honestly, I can't remember a time in my life where I've been more excited for the Bears as a franchise. And take this for what it is, guys. Like some people might be listening and be like, "Oh, great, here we go, homerism." I am not that guy. I am usually the neg, like the guy in the room that's telling everybody that the Bears did something stupid, that a player on the team is not very good. Like most people stand by their team. I don't stand by while my team makes dumb moves. But this offseason has been a very fun one to be a Bears fan. And waking up today at 4 o'clock in the morning, I don't remember the joy I don't know if I've ever felt that joy in free agency that I felt when I saw Allen Robinson was going to agree to terms with the Chicago Bears. And on top of that, for 3 years and $42 million, I feel like the Bears are getting a complete steal on Allen Robinson. And before people jump in and say $14 million a year, and that's not a steal, but it's right around where it should have been. I feel like if he was on a contract already, that's probably where he would have been around the 15 million mark. But the fact that he hit free agency as a clear-cut top 2 wide receiver, this is where the wide receivers are supposed to cash in free agency. This is where they're supposed to get overpaid. He did not get overpaid. I feel like the Bears got a great deal. And then obviously later in the day, hearing about Trey Burton, the tight end, going to the Bears, that was kind of like a shock.
Talk to us about that. Why is he regarded so heavily? Because I saw him in someone's top 10 free agency. I think it was CBS Sports, and I said, are you serious? Is that real? Why is Trey Burton so exciting?
Well, we had Sigmund Bloom on the show not long ago talking about the draft class and some of the free agents, and Sig said that he was his top tight end free agent over Jimmy Graham, over Tyler Eifert, and he was saying that because he's kind of been buried on the depth chart in Philadelphia behind Brent Selleck, who's been there forever, which they just released today. And then behind Zach Ertz. And Zach Ertz, we obviously know he's a crazy athlete. You're not going to start in front of him unless you're doing really well. But when Zach Ertz left the lineup in 2016 and 2017, Trey Burton stepped in, and the offense really didn't miss a beat. In the 2 games that Zach Ertz missed this season, he stepped in, he saw 10 targets, he caught 7 of them for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns. He legitimately took over the production that Zach Ertz was getting. And when you kind of figure out everything, like the Andy Reid coaching tree, Doug Peterson went out to Philly, and obviously Zach Ertz took the next step in his career. They highlight the tight end in that offense. Now Matt Nagy, coming from the Andy Reid offense, going to Chicago, he talked about it, saying that we need to build our team. We need to find the strengths of this team and then build around that. He's like, I don't want to put any expectations out there. But now, obviously, they felt like Adam Shaheen was more of an inline tight end. He's not ready to go out and make that impact just yet. He's only, 23 years old, so it's a lot to put on a kid. But Burton now, been in the league 4 years, playing behind Zach Ertz, playing in Doug Peterson's offense, which was probably similar to Matt Nagy's offense, what he's going to do. It's really exciting. I feel like, he performed well. Granted, it's a very small sample size, but there were high-end NFL executives talking about Trey Burton throughout this entire process, saying he was going to be the most coveted tight end in free agency, and seeing him sign for 4 years, $32 million, I think they answered a lot of those questions.
You had to be so excited, man. If I was you, I would have thought I was getting trolled every single time I read the good news. Because people mess around with you, man.
I legit thought I was dreaming when I first woke up. I sat there for a few minutes before I decided to tweet out and all that stuff. But, it's funny. As we're recording this, Bobby told you guys the time we're recording this. News just came out. The Packers have signed Jimmy Graham. Well, they're going to sign him tomorrow.
Oh,
it can't be
this
official.
Is so good. This is so exciting.
The Packers signing Jimmy Graham to a 3-year deal. This is a shock to me, Bobby, and I'll tell you why. I was legitimately just talking to my wife. She came down to tell me she was leaving, and she was asking me what's going on. And I said, and she's like, where's Jimmy Graham going? And I said, I think he's going back to the Saints. It would make a lot of sense.
So too.
With him towards the end of his career, with a big body, he's like a big body wide receiver. He's towards the end of his career. With Drew Brees signing a 2-year deal with the Saints, it just felt so right. So to see him go to the Packers, man, this is kind of a shock. How do you feel about it?
I was hearing the noise that the Packers really wanted Allen Robinson or Sammy Watkins, which, first of all, that sounds really bad for Jordy Nelson. Like, Jordy Nelson is getting cut, either him or Randall Cobb or both of them. I think probably both of them, but, they missed out on those guys, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But, getting Jimmy Graham, I think it's really the next best thing. You can't go get Marquise Lee, and frankly, I'd rather have Jimmy Graham than Marquise Lee. I know Graham's a little bit banged up, and that 3 years seems a little bit long, but, it makes sense for Graham that he needs to get that security because who knows how much longer his career is going to last. At this point, I think he's more of a red zone threat than he is across the entire game like he once was. I don't know if he can really do it anymore, but him with Aaron Rodgers, we're going to see the very best that Jimmy Graham has to offer. And you know what? I don't think he's a top 8 tight end anymore. I think he's a top 6, top 5 tight end.
You know what? I feel like this is very reminiscent of last year when the Packers got Martellus Bennett. It was around the same time. I remember that because I was out to eat, I want to say it was from, I can't remember what it was for, but I was out to eat and Martellus Bennett signed, and I was like, we got to leave dinner like as soon as possible. I got to get back home and write an article on, what this means. And a lot of people were really, really excited about Martellus Bennett going to Green Bay in free agency. And
they should have been.
I can understand the excitement, going to play with Aaron Rodgers. Why not? Right. Here's the issue is once I started going back through the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers, I should say, through his history, he's never targeted a tight end a whole lot in the offense. I mean, you can go back to the Jermichael Finley days, and there was like one season where Jermichael Finley, I think, saw 100 targets. So he's never heavily targeted the tight end position. Now, granted, if they were to cut Randall Cobb or if they were to cut Jordy Nelson because those salaries are so big, it might change things for me. But as of right now, Aaron Rodgers is not one of those quarterbacks like a Drew Brees where he ever heavily targeted his tight end. Now, is Jimmy Graham of the talent level that would call for him to do so? I mean, I guess. I mean, people said the same thing about Martellus Bennett, and Bennett started out the year extremely poor. I just think it takes time for them to develop some chemistry, and especially with Aaron Rodgers, who I talk about in the show all the time, is that, a lot of NFL quarterbacks you watch on TV and they say, oh, this is a back shoulder throw. That's not really true most of the time. A lot of quarterbacks cannot throw a ball into this little hole all the time with a moving target. Aaron Rodgers does that constantly, and he's done it really well with Jordy Nelson throughout his career, which is why those two had the chemistry. And when you saw Rodgers go down, you saw Jordy Nelson's production go to, ground level. Like, he was basically done in fantasy football. I don't know if that's going to come right away with Jimmy Graham. And honestly, I don't know if it's ever going to come, because Jimmy Graham was moving extremely bad last season. If it wasn't for the touchdowns, Jimmy Graham would have been considered one of the biggest busts in fantasy football. So honestly,
maybe he was unhealthy. I mean, maybe he comes back and he's healthy. We don't know. If he is healthy, how good can he be in this offense? I mean, let's not pretend Jermichael Finley would have been any kind of fantasy relevant tight end had he not had Aaron Rodgers. He would have been like one of these fringe guys that nobody knows, right? Aaron Rodgers has never had a good tight end. Last year he had Bennett. That was supposed to be his first good tight end. He was hurt the whole year. He thought about retiring, and now he gets a guy who's actually good. We're going to see maybe Aaron Rodgers does throw to tight ends now.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, do you change your offense for Jimmy Graham? At this point in his career, I don't think so. Now that I could be wrong on that. And like I said, things will change if the Packers decide to cut some players. But as of right now, at the stage Jimmy Graham is at right now, I don't see it. And that's the thing. As a Bears fan, I will tell you that I am okay with the Packers signing Jimmy Graham, because I feel like he's towards the end of his career. I don't think, and that's the thing, is some people are like, well, I got Antonio Gates playing until he's like 40. You got Jason Witten out there. Tight ends last longer than wide receivers. Jimmy Graham is not a tight end. I'm sorry. Like, when was the last time we asked Jimmy Graham to stand and block? He's a big wide receiver. And big wide receivers at the age Jimmy Graham is, I think he's 32 years old. They break down around that age. He's 31 or 32. They break down. And that's the thing with Jimmy Graham. I'm not overly excited. I think someone's going to overdraft him based on this news. I think he'll end up he'll come off the board as like the fourth tight end. And I'd rather have Hunter Henry at this point in their career. And Bobby, this is going to happen throughout our show today, just so you know. But we have more breaking news, and it happens to be my Chicago Bears again. The Bears have signed Taylor Gabriel to a 4-year deal.
I'm not even remotely interested in that.
You should be. It affects your boy Kevin White.
Yeah, I mean, that sucks, but you know what? He's probably not going to play anyway. He's going to get hurt in the preseason again. Maybe they'll cut him, and the Jags will get him in. Blake Bortles will turn him into a superstar.
Oh man, yeah. We don't need to go down that path. I just like breaking news. I feel like it's neat that I feel like we're on the radio and we're getting out to people, even though they're most likely listening to this show on their way to work in the morning or on their way home from work tonight, whatever the case may be. But the Jimmy Graham news is definitely a big deal. And here's my question to you. I mean, let's pretend that Trey Burton, in the Bears, he walks into that Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz role in that style offense. Who would you rather have in fantasy right now? In terms of cost, let's pretend that Trey Burton costs you a 10th round pick, or you have Jimmy Graham, who's going to cost you a 5th round pick. Which tight end would you rather have on your roster?
The answer is neither, Tags. I'm not taking Burton in the 10th round. I'm sorry. I'm not that excited about Mitch Trubisky passing the ball yet. Maybe it'll happen. I'm not the kind of guy who waits and see, but when Trubisky they did not let him loose at all. He was throwing 4 passes a game. Mm-hmm. It makes me think I'm not really so excited about Allen Robinson joining. I love Matt Nagy. I'm excited to see what he's going to do, but I think this is still a running offense. They've got a running offensive line. They've got a very good running back. And I don't think Taylor Gabriel's draftable. I'm not taking Allen Robinson in the first 4 rounds coming off a major surgery. And Trey Burton, I'm not going to trust him in the top 10 rounds. I'm just going to go up and I'm going to get one of the top 3 tight ends, or I'm going to get Hunter Henry, or I'm just going to wait until the very end and get Eric Ebron.
You know what? I was dead set on not letting you ruin my day, but you're trying to do it slowly. But here's the thing.
I'm really not. I mean, the Bears, I think that they are going to compete for a wild card this year. I don't think they're going to beat the Packers if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, but if he's not, I think they'll be right up there. They're not as good as the Vikings, but the Bears are a legitimate playoff contender. I'm just not as excited about the fantasy news, man. You can trust Mitch Trubisky. What is he, the 25th best quarterback in the NFL at this point in his career? Maybe he'll be better.
Get out of here. There's teams that are starting Sam Bradford and Teddy Bridgewater in 2018.
Yeah, I'd take them both over Mitch Trubisky this year.
Oh my God!
I think everybody would, man. I think everybody listening to this podcast is like, "Are you serious? Trubisky's in your top 25?"
Someone out there bookmark this podcast, write it down, do something, set a reminder in your phone, and come back to this pod and show Bobby when Trubisky looks good with a solid surrounding cast. Spit this back in his face, please. But my point on Trey Burton and Allen Robinson, it's funny because there's some people that started telling me that Allen Robinson going to the Bears was a bad thing for fantasy. That's not the case at all.
Agree.
Targets is the most important thing in fantasy football. Targets, and then talent comes into play, quarterback comes into play, all those things. Did you know that DeAndre Hopkins, did you know that he averaged more fantasy points per game with Tom Savage last year than he did with Deshaun Watson?
Yeah.
Why? Because Savage targeted him a little bit more, and those targets mean everything. So Allen Robinson, we know he's going to get targeted, but Trey Burton, here's the number I put in the article, Bobby, because I've been writing up these things and responding to all these. The number of targets you need as a tight end is 85. If you can get to 85 targets, you are essentially going to be, you have an 80% chance of finishing as a top 12 option. Over the last 5 years, there have been 62 tight ends to hit that number. 49 of them finished as top 12 fantasy options. Now that's the thing. You might say, well, how does he get to those targets?
Being on the Bears. They had nobody
Kevin
last
White,
year.
Kevin White, how many career targets does he have? 40. You have Cam Meredith coming off of a significant knee injury. And the Bears, by the way, they put their original tender on Cameron Meredith, like original round tender, which means if a team wants to sign Cameron Meredith and they pull him away from the Bears, they get no compensation for that, which means the Bears, they don't have a significant role expected for him. And I think that's why they went out and signed Taylor Gabriel here. So that's what I'm saying. You start to figure out, where are these targets going to go? Trey Burton, you don't pay him $32 million to not come in and see a lot of targets. So I think if you're listening to this and let's say you have a dynasty draft, or you're able to go out in dynasty right now and acquire Trey Burton at cheaper than he should be, I believe there's a legitimate chance that he finishes a top 12 tight end in 2018.
Yeah, I think that's what I would put the over-under at, like tight end 11.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not taking that in the first 10 rounds, though. Sorry, man.
Yeah, maybe I should have said 12th round or something like that. But that's basically the idea, was that Jimmy Graham, I don't think you should be drafting him in the 6th round, which is where he's likely going to go.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, before we move on, I want to tell our listeners a little bit more about today's sponsor, RX Bar. RX Bars are simply the best protein bars on the market. They use real food core ingredients, 3 egg whites, 2 dates, 6 almonds, no BS. It turns out real food ingredients actually taste really good. I'm telling you, that blueberry RX bar tastes just like candy. It's my very favorite. It's Tag's favorite. Give it a try. There's flavors for everyone that you're going to like. RX bars are gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, no added sugar, no artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, or fillers. Like I said, no BS. They've got 11 delicious flavor varieties, so you're going to find a few that you absolutely love. And you can support RX Bar for sponsoring our show and keeping it free for y'all. And they give you a great deal if you do. For 25% off your first order, visit rxbar.com/fantasypros and enter promo code fantasypros at checkout. Now, before we move on from the Bears, and I don't want to talk about it too long, but they did make a lot of noise. Jordan Howard is still sitting there, and Jordan Howard, I think, is going to be a major beneficiary from all this news. There was only one player in all of football who had more stacked boxes than Jordan Howard, and it was Leonard Fournette. Jordan Howard was still really good, and he was getting the ball a lot. I think, them stretching the field is going to help him a ton. I'm excited, man. I'm not going to take him in the first round, but I want Jordan Howard in a lot of drafts.
I like Jordan Howard. I think his value will go up under Matt Nagy. I do, however, think that some of the production will get eaten into by Tyreek Cohen. I think it's going to be a better real-life football team than it will be for fantasy purposes. Like Jordan Howard, being he doesn't catch passes, and that's the thing, it has nothing to do with being targeted because they're not going to target him. He can't catch the ball. Like legitimately, he's a bad pass-catching running back. So Jordan Howard, for me, he's like that late 2nd round, early 3rd round. Usually when you get into that territory, he's probably gone by then, to be honest. But I would much rather take, someone else in that territory, like a Leonard Fournette, like 100%.
He's gone because I'm taking him in. Yeah, I've got Fournette higher than him. I've got Fournette as my number 6 running back. Barkley is number 5. Jordan Howard's number 7. I've got him ahead of Kamara. I've got him ahead of Derrick Henry. I'm a big believer in Howard this year.
It's fair. Oh, wow. Breaking news. Holy Jesus. More Packers news, Bobby. Are you ready for this?
Is it a trade? Because there's not any super exciting guys left on free agency. There's a lot, but hold on. Let me take a guess. Okay, Aaron Rodgers is playing baseball now.
He's not. That's Russell Wilson. However, the Packers are releasing Jordy Nelson.
Dude, I'm good. I'm not really, because everybody knew that, but No. Legitimately, I just said this like a moment ago, saying that if Jordy Nelson got cut, if Randall Cobb got cut, that changes things for Jimmy Graham, right? This changes things for Jimmy Graham. This actually is going to move him up my board, because Jimmy Graham would now likely become the primary red zone guy. Like him and Rodgers need to work together on their chemistry. Like that does take time, but
releasing Jordy Nelson. I thought he would retire a Packer.
I remember when we did the mock draft episode a couple weeks ago and you took Jordy Nelson in like the 5th round.
Yeah.
I was pulling out my hair like, this is really scary for you, man. I don't think Jordy Nelson's going to be very good this year.
Yeah.
So, you've won like 8. I got 1 on my book, so I'm happy with that.
Well, I don't know if he's going to be playing for anybody. I mean, like the Packers are a pretty wide receiver needy team, I would say. But I think more big news out of this is that if you didn't listen to me, like we've had podcasts, I've done articles. If you're listening to this right now, go out in your dynasty league right now and acquire Geronimo Allison.
Yes, I like it.
Been saying that for a long time, and now he's going to walk into the starting lineup.
So what about Davante Adams here? Is Davante Adams now like a fringe first-round talent? Like, is he a top 15 player?
I already had him there, man.
Me too.
I already thought he was being a little undervalued. I have him right now right behind AJ Green and Mike Evans, and I feel like he's very, very much in that tier. And if you wanted to tell me that you're going to take Davante Adams over AJ Green or Mike Evans, I wouldn't argue with you.
I think I'd argue with you because I'm not so sure that Rodgers is just going to pepper him with targets. I think that AJ Green is going to get peppered with targets. Mike Evans, we've seen it. He's going to get a ton of targets, even though they've got 2 tight ends that they're paying a ton of money to at this point. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they're trading OJ Howard, but because of that, I've got him 2 spots behind Green and Evans. He's my number 14 player on the board, and I've got Green, I think, at 11 and Evans at 12. So.
It's fair to say, though, that's what I'm saying, is like if you really want Davante Adams, you have to take him in the first round or the beginning of the second. Like that's where you have to take him. And honestly, I couldn't think of a safer player to draft there. That's the reason that I have no issue taking him over those guys. Like Mike Evans has got some competing targets, like especially if they land Saquon Barkley. You know, they have Chris Godwin coming up. They re-signed Cameron Brate. There's all these things going on in Tampa where it's like there's only so many pieces of the pie, right?
Yeah.
And how much can Mike Evans really get? I think we saw a little bit of that last year. AJ Green, we know he's a stud when he's healthy, but the issue is the Bengals, and are they a competent franchise, a competent offense? That's a question. Davante Adams is safer than those guys. Like Davante Adams is up in that conversation with Michael Thomas, where it's like these are the safest players in fantasy football. You know what you're getting week in, week out with them. They're very consistent.
It's a good point.
That's what I'm saying. I have no issue taking Adams at the end of the first round. If you're going to take a wide receiver there, he's definitely in that conversation.
If you had an A- grade in your draft and instead you took Davante Adams instead of AJ Green, I'd still give you an A-. There's hardly any difference. We're just nitpicking here when I said that I'd have Adams after.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Speaking of wide receivers in this range, right after Adams, I've got Keenan Allen, and I consider him in that, in that tier there. And then it drops off quite a bit, and I had Tyreek Hill, T.Y. Hilton. Tyreek Hill now, I had him as my number 10 wide receiver. I don't know, man. He might be like 15, 16, 17 now.
He's further than that for me. Honestly, that's obviously something we should probably announce right now. We haven't talked about him at all. One of the biggest signings right after the Allen Robinson one was Sammy Watkins going to the Chiefs. Yeah, 3-year deal, $48 million. He got $30 million guaranteed. So here's the thing. I always felt like Sammy Watkins was being undervalued a little bit in free agency. I thought people were kind of overlooking the talent that he has when he's on the field. And if the Bears landed him or Robinson, I was good with either. But like, Watkins is a difference maker. I truly did not believe he would get more money than Allen Robinson. Didn't feel like he should have, to be fair with you. I mean, the chronic foot injury, we've seen Julio Jones deal with that numerous times throughout his career. I think that's more worrisome than the ACL.
Agree. Yes.
Yeah, the ACL now is like, it's almost like a minor surgery now. Like, I know they call it a major knee injury, and I understand why. It's a long road back.
It's a long time to recover, but everybody recovers. This foot injury, it can linger your entire career.
That's exactly where I'm at with it. And that's the thing is like, so Sammy Watkins, I love the player. You know that. I mean, I've been a Sammy Watkins fan. I just don't like the situations that he's been put into. And honestly, from a fantasy perspective, I'm not in love with the move to the Chiefs. Now, let me explain myself, because first things first, Patrick Mahomes has an arm that can get the ball.
Perfect quarterback for him.
100%. I actually agree with that 100%. And if they didn't have Travis Kelce, if they didn't have Tyreek Hill, and if they didn't have Kareem Hunt, I would be more excited about it, because I really believe Watkins is a number 1 wide receiver. I think he is. But here's the thing is how many, I started thinking about this, is like, can you give us a number 1 or a number 2 tight end in Travis Kelce? Can you give us a top 15 wide receiver in Tyreek Hill? Can you give us a top 10 running back in Kareem Hunt and another fantasy viable receiver in Sammy Watkins? My answer is no. Their defense is going downhill. They've released some players. I get all that. But Tyreek Hill, to me, he's a very boomer bust fantasy option. So I think him and Watkins, as of right now, I'm putting them both in like that high end wide receiver 3 territory where they're going to be very they are going to be very boomer bust.
You have Tyreek Hill like number 25?
That's pretty much where I'm putting him, down in the 23 area, I believe. Yeah, like I started moving things around today. Like I haven't finalized anything, but that's how I feel about it. Sammy Watkins, he was frustrated in Los Angeles, right? Like they wanted to re-sign him. He was frustrated. He wasn't getting the targets. He got 70 targets last year. He wanted to go to a place where he's going to get more targets. Why would he sign with the Chiefs team if he wasn't promised at least, to be more involved in the offense? Because he's going from a team that had Todd Gurley, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and, Gerald Everett. Like that was his surrounding talent. The Chiefs might be better. So why would Watkins do this if he was frustrated with his lack of targeting in LA? I don't understand that.
Well, he was the number 4 option. He's going to be the number 1 option there, even though they have better guys. I mean, the Rams had an amazing offense, but let's not pretend they didn't give the ball to Sammy Watkins enough, right?
They didn't, though. 70 targets is not enough. That's not enough for someone
That's what
of Sammy
I'm saying.
Watkins.
Yeah. Not even close. I don't understand why they did that.
I don't either, and that's why ultimately I think Watkins wanted to seek alternatives. But going to the Chiefs, I mean, I don't know if this just came down to money for Watkins. Like looking at the deal, knowing where he landed, it seems like it's about money.
He wanted to live in Kansas City. That's what it was, man. He wanted
who wants
that barbecue.
to live in Kansas City? Who wants to live in Kansas?
He's the big flat earth guy, and Kansas City's in the middle of the earth. He doesn't want to fall off the edge.
I can't.
Dude, Tyreek Hill was the number 5 wide receiver last year as a 23-year-old. You're going to have him number 23? You got to change that, dude. You got to change that quick.
Hold on. Here's the good news. We're not playing fantasy football in 2017. That's the news flash going across the bottom of the screen right now. It is not 2017 fantasy, Bobby. All right. So Alex Smith is gone. That obviously, and so no matter what anybody thinks, no matter how high people think Patrick Mahomes' upside is, he's not as good as Alex Smith right now.
This year. No.
He's not going to be as good as Alex Smith was last year. That's just not going to happen. That doesn't happen with rookie quarterbacks. I understand he's going into his second year, but he's a rookie quarterback in terms of his starting ability. To ask him to walk in and produce, like I said, a top 2 tight end, multiple top 36 wide receivers, and a top 10 running back, it's just unrealistic. Yeah. So again, like Tyreek Hill, like who are you going to bet against here? Are you going to bet against the guy that they just paid $30 million guaranteed to bring in, or are you going to bet against Tyreek Hill, a guy who was questioned on whether or not he could be that number 1 receiver? Again, he outproduced everything that I thought Tyreek Hill would. Like he proved me wrong. I get it. I still do not believe he's a wide receiver who should ever see more than, 80 to 90 targets in an offense. I just don't. I feel like he's someone he's better to use in space. He's not a guy you target 10 times a game. Watkins is that player. Kelsey is that player. Kareem Hunt, he's going to get his work. So again, you have to take away from somebody. And I'm not saying that Watkins is all of a sudden going to be a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2. I am putting them both in the same territory, but I'll tell you this right now. I would rather bet on Sammy Watkins.
Okay. That's interesting to me, man. I don't know. I can't do it. I'm worried about the foot. And here's the thing about Mahomes is he's playing an Andy Reid offense. Like all these people are saying, he's going to be a quarterback 1 this year. There is no way he's going to be a QB1 in Andy Reid's offense. They're going to run the ball 5,000 times with Spencer Ware and Kareem Hunt. And notice I said Spencer Ware first. That was an accident. Kareem Hunt is the number 1 guy, but Spencer Ware is going to make some noise too. Plus you've got Tyreek Hill who's going to get, I think 30, 50 carries now. So I know he's not going to get 105 targets again, but he's going to get 70 with 30 to 50 carries.
So here's the deal. When I try and be so level-headed with these things because it's easy to let your emotions run high. Like I said, I really believe in Sammy Watkins, the player. Tyreek Hill, I doubted a little bit, but I want to look at everything, try and look at it like, not have a biased opinion, just look at it from a general standpoint. And that's the thing with Andy Reid, you think Chiefs and you're like, well, they throw the ball 500 times a year? Like that's not much. Here's the deal. I think Andy Reid, though, he's a chameleon. And the reason I say that is because even though he's been that way with the Chiefs so far, I think it has to do with Alex Smith and the way that the team was built around Jamal Charles, not having a big wide receiver, developing Travis Kelce. You've seen them getting up in the pass attempts a little bit more. The reason I say that Andy Reid's a chameleon is because if you go back to his days with the Eagles, Andy Reid's offense ranked top 15 in pass attempts for 9 straight seasons from 2004 to 2012. So I think that he legitimately builds his team around the players on it. And so because of that, I do think that they're going to increase pass attempts. I really do believe that. But they also can't stray far away from Kareem Hunt. There's a reason they succeeded. Spencer Ware coming back will help provide another burst.
Kareem Hunt might be suspended too.
Oh, well, that's another story in the background. But that's the thing, is just like, without playing favorites, you have to assume that Kelsey, Hill, and Hunt all lose some of their upside with Watkins coming into town.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's fair. I'm just not moving him down from 5 to 23. I'm moving him from like 5 to 16.
Well, you had him at 5. Wait, hold on. Hold on a second.
No, I didn't have him 5, but
before.
I'm saying he performed at 5. I don't think he's going to perform all the way down at 23 all of a sudden.
I think things change, man. I think someone like Watkins coming to town drastically changes his projection. And
if he can stay healthy.
And that's the thing. Like, I don't know how people are going to view Tyreek Hill. I think we're going to see an ADP over the next few weeks. But here's one thing, though. I think we're seeing, we've seen running backs going atop the draft a lot, right? We're starting to see a clear-cut top wide receiver tree. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a mad break after Keenan Allen. You know what I mean? Where it's like you have Antonio Brown, Beckham, Hopkins, Julio, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, AJ Green, Davante Adams, Keenan Allen. And after that, I don't think there's anybody you could feel great about wide receiver 1 production seemingly every week. You know what I mean? I don't get it.
Yep. I totally agree with that.
So we might see a change in the first round where it's like people don't go so heavy running backs.
Now, Tags, we still have a lot of skill player positions to talk about, but there were a lot of non-skill player positions that signed that are going to impact fantasy, and I think the biggest one here is Andrew Norwell. He's a 26-year-old guard that the Jags just signed away from the Panthers. They signed him as the richest offensive lineman in the history of all football, and this doesn't make sense to me, man. Like, you got rid of Allen Robinson, and you're doubling down on, we're afraid to pass the ball in important games. We're just going to keep letting teams stack the box against us, but we're going to do it a little bit more and just keep handing the ball to a guy who gets 3.9 yards per carry. Do you think that this actually helps Leonard Fournette? Because I don't think that it does.
100% it does. Like, that's the thing. Norwell is known as to be one of the best guards in football.
Yeah.
He's like, that's the thing. He's worth the money. This was supposed to be the Giants' new offensive guard. Apparently the Giants, everybody was saying that he's a Giant. It's just a matter of waiting till free agency opens up. So to see the Jags come in and offer him that much money, they obviously knew how bad they needed offensive line help. And I've been saying that all along, like going through the draft, where they're at in the draft, they're not going to find elite talent, 29, 30. I can't remember which one it was they're picking at, but they're picking right there at the end. I think it's 29. And that's what I'm saying. You're not going to find an elite offensive lineman there that you could just plug into your starting lineup and know he's going to produce. Norwell does that. And that's the thing. With this salary cap going up like seemingly every year and all this cap space that teams have, I really don't know how there aren't more teams involved in these conversations. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like people have the cap room to spend, and that's why it's nice to see some of these teams go out there, like the Packers. Nobody expected the Packers to be in the running for Jimmy Graham, but there they were. They were apparently interested in Sammy Watkins. That didn't happen, but it's definitely, I think Andrew Norwell is a massive upgrade. I have Norwell as my top offensive lineman in this free agency
not
class.
Even close,
it's not even really that close. So
I mean, I'm not saying his presence isn't good, but the thing is, it also changes something else where instead of stacking the box, 62% of the time, they're going to stack the box 75% of the time against the Jags because they know they're going to run the ball. If they keep doing that, Fournette wasn't very good when they stacked the box. I'm sorry, he wasn't.
Well, that's the thing. Is just like, is it because the offensive line got no push? I think that's part of it. I think they had graded out as one of the worst offensive lines in all of football. So
is anybody good when they stack the box though?
Yeah, that's the thing.
You stack the box against David Johnson. What does he do?
Well, that's the thing. David Johnson.
His stats go backwards. Everyone's do.
Everybody's do. And that's the thing is just like, you have to wonder, did them not retaining Allen Robinson, is that going to hurt ultimately? Marquise Lee, he's back on, he actually re-signed with them. It was
so stupid.
Yeah. I saw that deal right before we got on. I can't remember the details of it, but he's back there. I mean, D.D. Westbrook, Keelan Cole, you guys know what that looks like. And that's why, to me, it seemed like, it was a no-brainer to franchise tag Allen Robinson, or with the money he got, I felt like they could have afforded it. But more breaking news.
Well, if you let Blake Bortles go, you can do whatever you want. You can sign Norwell and Allen Robinson, and then you get a replacement level quarterback who's just as good.
I still wish that Alex Smith could have gone to the Jags. That would have been a perfect fit.
Man.
But yeah, speaking of quarterbacks, Josh McCown is going back to the Jets on a 1-year deal.
Oh man. He's 39 years old.
Yeah, he had a really good season, so I don't want to take anything away from him. But yeah, apparently they're going to sign him. They're going to sign Teddy Bridgewater. So does that mean the Jets are not going to draft a quarterback? I would assume that they do. I would still assume at number 6.
They're signing McCown and Bridgewater. I mean, I've heard that they're probably going to sign Bridgewater, but if it's not official and now they're signing McCown, it makes me think like, maybe there's something there. Maybe Bridgewater's going somewhere else.
It's a good question. I mean, that's the thing. We've been hearing that the Jets are the team, that they're the ones that are landing on Bridgewater, and now literally just popped up 1 year, $10 million for Josh McCown. So, I mean, that sounds like it's a holdover deal, like where it's like they're going to give whoever they draft or another quarterback a year to kind of catch on to the system, work their way in, sit on the bench for a year. I mean,
Bridgewater could do that, but maybe not. It seems really risky. I would think that they're missing on Bridgewater and they're going to draft a quarterback now. Here's the thing that interests me. Sam Bradford signed for $20 million. I'd rather have Josh McCown straight up than Sam Bradford on his knees, and he went for half that price.
The odd part about that whole Bradford thing is like the landing spot. I mean, I understand, like, if you have a Sam Bradford who's a fresh guy who doesn't have any health concerns with his knees or anything like that, I get it, I guess. But Sam Bradford is, like, as of right now, is probably one of the least mobile quarterbacks in all of football. And you go out and you put him on the Arizona Cardinals, who have arguably a bottom 5 offensive line in all of football. It's a real problem. It's the reason that I've mocked Lamar Jackson to them at 15 in the draft, because I really believe they need a quarterback who can evade pressure, because they don't have a good offensive line, and he's going to get killed back there.
They're still going to draft Jackson. That's why they Sam Bradford. Do you really think that they're expecting Bradford to play more than 5 games? That's all they need. 5 games, Lamar Jackson's ready. You plug him in. He can be a playoff quarterback right now. I'm not saying he's going to carry you to victories or anything, but he can win ball games because of his legs. I mean, he is Michael Vick. There's not much of a difference. He's more accurate. He's just as good at running the football.
He doesn't have the arm that Michael Vick did. I mean, Michael Vick could throw it 70 yards.
He has a very good arm, though. He's a lot more accurate than Josh Allen.
If he does have a good arm, he didn't show it at the combine, because his what they do is they track quarterback ball speeds, and a lot of people were concerned about Baker Mayfield, saying he didn't have a strong arm, and he goes out and he was only like 1 mile an hour behind Josh Allen, so he's throwing plenty hard. But I want to say that, so they were at like 61, 62 miles an hour, and Lamar Jackson was at 49.
Oh.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Whoa, maybe he's going to slip then. Is he? Yeah, are you sure he's a first-round quarterback? That sounds horrible.
I'm not. I feel like he's a boomer bust prospect, and I feel like I understand some of the things that people like in him. I also understand the concerns. Like, I'm not one of those that's going to jump on and say he's a bust. I won't say that he's a... There's people that I have strong feelings about. Him, I understand that it can go both ways. I mean, would I want my team drafting him if they were, like trying to build for the future? No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
It's just too much for a
first round. But someone like
pick.
The Cardinals, who already has the defense, they've got the David Johnson. Larry Fitzgerald is coming back.
He'll fit well there.
Yeah.
He should, yeah.
All right, other quarterback news. Case Keenum went to the Broncos, and to me, this tells me that they're going to draft a developmental quarterback. I don't think that the Broncos are thinking Case Keenum's going to be around for 3, 4, 5 years. He's already 30 years old. A lot of people think he's younger than that. He's 30 years old. I think they're getting Josh Allen at 5, man.
I don't think so. I don't think they're thinking about a quarterback anymore. I think they're going to look to trade back. It's either that or they're going to take Quentin Nelson at 5 if he's there.
What a stud.
But the Broncos have said they want to build their offensive line. And the thing is Case Keenum, here's the thing. Like someone like Teddy Bridgewater or like AJ McCarron or Sam Bradford, those guys are like just like a stopgap quarterback, or they could potentially be more, but you're not going to trust them with your franchise. We haven't heard the official details of Case Keenum's contract, which is really weird because we're hearing all these other contracts and what people are getting, but we just heard it's a 3-year deal. We don't know anything about it. So that's going to be very telling to know if it's very front loaded, kind of like the Bears did with Mike Glennon. I don't know, but a 3-year deal sounds like it's more than a stopgap situation, which tells me Denver might trade back with the Bills because the Bills are apparently trying to jump the Jets in the draft order to get in the top 5 to grab the quarterback that they want. And if that does happen, Denver is a team that can now move back, and potentially they might even be able to get Josh Allen later. I think people are overestimating the quarterback position here because I've been told, Bobby, I know you were in that conversation on Twitter, was that people were telling us no way that Josh Allen lasts till 15. No way Lamar Jackson lasts till 15. There's legitimately people that think 5 quarterbacks are going in the top 11
That's bizarre, dude. That is, I would bet on 3 in the top 10.
I would too.
4 would be a surprise.
Agreed. Agree 100%.
5 is nuts.
Yeah, I don't. Honestly, I thought Josh Allen would fall to 22 or one quarterback, whether it be Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. I felt like one of them was going to fall to the Bills at 21-22 at that pick right there. And
I think Lamar Jackson's going to fall, and I think Josh Rosen is going to fall. Nobody's talking about that. I think he's going to fall.
I don't know. Like, I keep going back and forth on this. Like, the Giants, I feel like the Giants have been saying all the right things. Like, oh, we're sticking with Eli and we're doing this and we're doing that. I mean, here's the issue. Are they going to take a running back to run behind that offensive line? No. I don't think if Saquon Barkley is there at 2, I don't think they take him because it's like sticking a Ferrari in rush hour traffic. It's you're not doing anything. So why would you do that, right? You have so many other holes. All right, we don't want to do that. Do we go with Quentin Nelson? Do you take a guard at number 2 in the NFL draft? It's a possibility. I'm not going to say it's not because he's kind of like the lock player, like the one that everybody knows he's going to be a good player. Like it's taking very minimal risk. I get that. Like, or do you say like, we're going to go over and look at another way? Like, are we going to go Josh Rosen and say, we're preparing for the future? Like, I don't know. I mean, they've been saying all the right things that they're sticking with Eli, this and that, but I don't think that they would come out and say, oh, we're going to take our quarterback at 2. Like, I don't think they would have come out and say that, but man, it's a really big mess, and I can't wait to do my next mock draft because after the dominoes fall in free agency, it's so much more fun to look at teams and find out what the holes are, what they're going to do, who's going to potentially trade, so many different things.
I can't wait to read it, man. Just make sure you give us Cortland Sutton on the Jags again, and because I think we need another wide receiver. And Desmond Harrison. You said earlier that there's no impact offensive lineman in the NFL draft. I think you're wrong. I think Desmond Harrison could be awesome if he can, not get suspended or anything like that.
Well, Desmond Harrison is someone that I posted on Twitter. It was like a month ago, maybe, where I watched his tape and I was taken back by this kid. Like I talked about him on the podcast too before the combine, saying to watch him. And at the combine, he lit it up. Like he did exactly what I thought he'd do there. He looked fantastic. He put on weight.
Yeah.
So much to like there. I mean, that's I know nobody listening cares about Desmond Harrison, but he's like that. That's like a name to say like, okay, well, if we don't get one of these studs at these positions, let's hope we bolster the offensive line. He's one of those guys that could do it with some off the field concerns. But I think the real loser in all this, just moving it past quarterback real quick,
besides
AJ McCarron, AJ McCarron won his grievance against the Bengals and became a free agency. And I said it on our free agent primer podcast that I feel like he won, but he lost because this is not a great time to be a free agent quarterback with the way the free agency was, with the way the quarterbacks are stacked in the beginning of the draft. It just felt like it was I don't know where AJ McCarron's going now. Like the Browns, they just traded for Tyrod Taylor. I don't know what's happening here. I have no idea where AJ McCarron is going to end up. He would have made sense for someone like Arizona to take a shot on and then draft a quarterback. I don't know where we're at with him, man.
Is Deshaun Watson going to be back before like the first 4 or 5 weeks? I think McCarron could showcase himself there in Houston, playing for a good team. Someone I think is going to be a playoff contender with J.J. Watt coming back. And then you know what? If Deshaun Watson comes back, you trade McCarron if he plays well.
I mean, I don't know if McCarron has any trade value. I think people in the fantasy community have valued Josh.
I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm talking about real life. I mean, they almost got a first for him.
That's the thing is like the Browns. That was the Browns. That was the team that you were relying on spending money on AJ McCarron. And when they traded for Tyrod Taylor and knowing that they have picks 1 and 4 in the draft, I don't think that there's any way that they go after him. I really don't. I mean, because they gave a 3rd round pick for Tyrod Taylor, and not just any third, the first pick in the 3rd round. Yeah. I know we haven't done a podcast since then, but I could let you guys know that.
Well, let's talk about it, man. It's a late reaction, but let's talk about Tyrod Taylor, Jarvis Landry.
I'm not excited about it. I mean, I don't know what the Browns are doing here. Like, I don't know why they would give up their first pick in the 3rd round to acquire Tyrod Taylor, a guy who was about to be released by the Bills. I mean, they apparently were going to stick with him for one more season, but they really, really wanted to trade him. So to see a 3rd round pick given up for a 1-year stopgap quarterback, I don't get it. I think it was a stupid move on the Browns' part. I think they have a stupid amount of draft picks, and I think that that's why they were able to do it. I don't think any team does this if they have just a 1st, a 2nd, and a 3rd round pick. I don't think there's any chance the Browns would have done that deal. But knowing they have 5 other draft picks in the first 2 rounds, that's why they did it. But I mean,
it doesn't matter though. Like you can't just say it's a good value because you have other draft picks. Like keep that draft pick and use it. I mean, you could have signed AJ McCarron for free. Do we know if Tyrod Taylor is better than AJ McCarron? I'd call it 50-50.
I'd probably say 50-50 too. I'd say Tyrod is like nearing the end of his prime years, because once he starts to lose some of that athleticism, he's not going to be regarded as a quarterback you want starting for your NFL franchise. And that comes from someone who appreciated Tyrod Taylor's golden years. I think he's towards the end of that. But as for Jarvis Landry, that's a huge knock on his projection. Like he's moved down into wide receiver 3 territory. And honestly, it would not shock me if he was even worse than that. I just say that because this team is obviously going to go in the direction. It's either they're going to grab Saquon Barkley, or they're going to grab another running back and use Duke Johnson in the passing game. They're going to use Josh Gordon. They're going to use Corey Coleman. Like there's so many different names in this offense. I don't know why. There's a lot of things. Now, the Browns had so much cap space, it makes sense. I understand why they signed Jarvis Landry, they're going to pay him, $18 million this year. I understand why they did that. You have to spend your money. They had money to spend. Nobody wanted to come there in free agency. I get it, but not excited from a fantasy standpoint for him or
Josh Gordon.
I'm not excited.
I dropped them both out of my top 20. I had them 15 and 16 before this. I moved them to 20 and 22.
Wow. Hey, Bobby, breaking news for your Jaguars. You talked about Cortland Sutton. I don't know if that's happening because Donte Moncrief is signing with the Jags.
Yeah, baby, yes. Oh, yeah. This is awesome.
Yeah, that just came up on my screen, so I figured I'd share the good news.
Man, when you said wide receiver, I'm looking at the wide receivers here. Terrell Pryor, that would be okay. John Brown, there's some upside there. And then I saw Donte Moncrief, and I was hoping that's what we were going to say. Like that came to my mind right before he said it. Dude, I'm so pumped.
Yeah, no, it's a big signing. A lot of people were expecting Moncrief to go to the Ravens or back to the Colts. He apparently wanted to go back to the Colts. The Colts apparently did not want him. So that's a big domino falling in the wide receiver board.
Well, if the Colts don't want him, that's really good news because the Colts are stupid.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. That's a team that's been around him for 4 years, and they obviously can determine whether or not they want to bring him back. So they're a team that's going to draft a wide receiver. I wouldn't be shocked to see them jump into the free agent market and maybe try and sign someone like a Jordan Matthews, who's still out there. Man, some of these big names, the wide receivers are starting to come off the board. Like the biggest names you mentioned, you have John Brown, you have Jordan Matthews, Mike Wallace, Eric Decker. Those are some smaller names. Like nobody's really excited out there. Like, cause Jarvis Landry's gone, Allen Robinson, Sammy Watkins, Albert Wilson, Paul Richardson, Marquise Lee, all these people signing. The real news to me here this free agency period, which I actually kind of expected, but nobody else seemed to, is that no running backs are being signed. And that goes back to it being a young man's game. It really is. And it's, the draft is deep with running backs here. We heard so much smoke. I don't know where it even came from, that Doug Martin, the Raiders were going to be making a serious run at Doug Martin. Well, if they wanted him, they would have signed him by now. Like seriously, that would have happened. It's obviously not a priority to them. To see Carlos Hyde's name not mentioned anywhere to this point is a little odd. I figure we might hear something about him or Deion Lewis, but nothing.
He's a top 12 running back talent in the NFL. Like he's a bigger free agent in terms of like the best at his position than Jarvis Landry, Allen Robinson, Sammy Watkins, and nobody's talking about him because running backs don't make that big of an impact. I mean, you can go out and you can get actually, I'm looking at the free agents here. Isaiah Crowell, Rex Burkhead, DeMarco Murray, Frank Gore. Yeah, I'm not interested in any of them. So it's Carlos Hyde or Deion Lewis, maybe Jerick McKinnon, but, he can't do what Carlos Hyde can do. So, there's a pretty big difference there. However, it's a lot more important for these teams to go out and get an Allen Robinson, a Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I just want to say right now, Chris Ivory, if anybody knows him, if he's listening, anything, seriously, go and give your agent a high five. Chris Ivory's agent got him a 2-year, $5.5 million deal with $3.3 million guaranteed with Buffalo before all of this started. Yeah. And it was genius because there is no way once all these names and like you could see all the names just sitting out there.
He would have been retired. If that didn't happen, he would have retired, I bet. Because no one was going to sign him.
Yeah, it's very likely. It's kind of like what happened with Michael Turner when he was like let go from the Falcons. A lot of people thought he would latch on somewhere and everybody just kind of moved on. And it was like nothing was ever said about it. So
speaking of which, Eddie Lacy's sitting out there. He's still 27 years old. He's got a lot of talent. Christine Michael coming off the surgery and everything. There's all of these running backs out there, and we're going to forget about a lot of them.
We are, and that's the thing is like, so the names that I would expect to be signed, Carlos Hyde obviously is going to, there's been rumors about him going to the Colts to join Marlon Mack, which would make sense. Deion Lewis will get signed. Jerick McKinnon's going to get a deal. Apparently, I take that back. The Bucs are showing interest in Jerick McKinnon.
I like that.
Rex Burkhead's going to get a deal. Isaiah Crowell will get a deal. The names that are on the borderline here, what I would say are Jonathan Stewart, Doug Martin, Adrian Peterson, Danny Woodhead,
Alfred
now.
Morris, Jeremy Hill.
Yeah, those guys. I think Jeremy Hill should. He's still pretty young. I would be curious. I really do want to see him in a different offense just to see if he can rekindle what he kind of had his rookie year, because what he did in his rookie year was special, and then everything just kind of went downhill. I don't know if it just has to do with the offensive line crumbling, and he just gets what you block for him. And if that's the case, then maybe he can succeed elsewhere. I don't know. But yeah, the running back market is
You know who would be a really sweet signing that's going to go under the radar is Andre Ellington. He was so good there for a couple games, just getting reception after reception. And don't forget, I mean, he's got some talent as well. I'm not saying he's going to come in and be fantasy relevant or anything, but for an NFL football team, if you need a third down running back, he's a guy that I'd be eyeing.
Charles Sims is another one that's out there as a free agent.
I like him.
I think he could do more than just third down work. I would like to see him in a different offense because he flashed a little bit with the Bucs. That team is just known to be where running backs just die. So, but
Let me ask you about a couple other players' tags, okay? Because I'm looking at the wide receivers. There's still a couple guys out there that are interesting. Terrell Pryor, just because he's got all that talent. He's still just 28 years old, so maybe we can see him, turn into a quality wide receiver. I'm not saying he'll do what he did in Cleveland, but he might be fantasy relevant. Mike Wallace finished the year strong. I'm expecting him to end up back in Baltimore because they need all the wide receivers they can get. And then Tavon Austin. Tavon Austin, he was buried with the Rams, but he's still talented. If you can use him in the right way, I think that could be another under-the-radar signing.
I don't know. None of those guys are striking me as like big upside guys. Like I just feel like they're gadget players. Like I mean Terrell Pryor, I don't feel like any team should take a shot on him. I feel like we know what he is. He's almost 30 years old. Like he's not a young chicken. Like people attach him to young because they just heard of his name at the wide receiver position. That's not the case. I would rather take a shot on someone like Jaron Brown or Bryce Butler. Those are the two names that I feel like can be number two options in an offense. One name that I'm really curious to see where he ends up is Jordan Matthews. I think Jordan Matthews can make an impact in this league, whether it be a big slot receiver with the Saints. By the way, that's where I would love to see him go, is because Willie Snead, basically they're willing to let him walk, because I want to say he received an original round tender, which means any team can sign him and the Saints would get nothing in return. So that just kind of tells you they don't really care about losing Willie Snead. So Jordan Matthews in that Marcus Colston role, that would be fun. So that's a signing I would watch as a potential thing with Jimmy Graham now off the market. They need someone big over the middle of the field. And then, like last year, I thought there was an underrating signing of Kendall Wright for the Bears. I feel like if he lands in the right offense, I feel like he can make an impact too. I still feel like he's got plenty of game left inside of him. And, if he were to go to a team like, say, the Patriots to fill that Danny Amendola role that, that just opened up, that's got potential to it. Outside of him, I just see a bunch of names that are just kind of names at this point.
Yep. Any other offensive players you want to talk about? I want to hit on some of these defensive players just really quick before we end the show.
No, I think we hit on most of the players. I mean, the only thing at tight end, obviously, we haven't heard anything on Tyler Eifert. That's a name we're waiting to hear. Austin Seferian-Jenkins, those are the two names at tight end, I think.
And McCarron, I'm curious to see what's going to happen with him. And then obviously all the running backs we talked about, especially Lewis, Hyde, McKinnon. So Richard Sherman signing with the 49ers, and he's getting so much crap from the Seahawks fans. You know what? Good for him. That is awesome. He's going to get to play them twice a year, and I'll tell you what, he's going to whoop them. Good for Richard Sherman, man.
Yeah, Richard Sherman, that whole signing, there's a lot of things going around the NFL right now saying that he got hosed on that deal, that the 49ers got a steal because he was representing himself in free agency and this and that. And I think it was a kind of a jab at the Seahawks for letting him go to going to a divisional rival. Like that's a big thing. That's like Brian Urlacher going to the Packers, when he was, still considered in somewhat of his prime. And that would be something that wouldn't be handled very well. So, I mean, Richard Sherman, maybe he took less money, but I think that it's a phenomenal landing spot for him. I think he should have a shot at a Super Bowl before the time he's done.
Wow. You really think 49ers are going to be a Super Bowl team sometime soon?
I think that John Lynch is building something there. I do. I feel like he's doing something special.
Oh, yeah.
And Kyle Shanahan, to have those two guys locked up for 5 years, 4 more years, I think that's a massive thing. And I think they're doing a lot of the right moves. And some people are disappointed that they didn't sign a wide receiver today, that Sammy Watkins or Allen Robinson should have gone there. And, I've talked about that, as I feel like they're competent enough with Pierre Garçon coming back from injury. Marquise Goodwin, obviously they signed him to a contract extension the other day. And then Trent Taylor, they're excited about him in the slot. Not that they can't upgrade that position, but they showed to make it work. And depending on who they get to play running back, they might have another receiving option. And I actually believe in the second round of the draft, they might go running back like a Ronald Jones or a Sony Michel, which would be seriously like your fantasy light bulb should go off if that happens.
I still believe in Joe Williams. I think that he's getting the job. I don't think they're going to draft anybody this year. He's such a freak athlete, man.
He is a freak, but he's more interested in wrestling right now. I think he's done.
Full of defensive players who haven't signed. Tremaine Johnson, Kyle Fuller from your Bears, Sheldon Richardson, and then Sue, who got released by the Dolphins. What's going to happen with these guys?
Sue is really interesting. Like, him getting cut, he's still one of the best players in the game. They haven't even officially cut him yet, have they? Like, I know that they were talking about it, and it's bound to happen. I just don't think that we've seen him actually freed just yet, but I think that's coming tomorrow. I want to say that they were planning on releasing him on Wednesday. So we'll see what happens with him. I'm sure he's going to generate tons of interest in the open market. As for
I heard Philly and Seattle, man, if either of those two teams got him, that would just be wrong. That'd be so unfair.
Yeah, Philadelphia. I mean, I don't know if that's going to happen because they signed Haloti Ngata today to a 1-year deal. So I don't know if that's going to happen. As for the cornerbacks, it's really interesting to see no cornerback signed outside of Aaron Colvin. He went to the Texans. He signed with them on a 4-year deal. I don't think I've seen the terms to that yet, but it's a pretty big deal for the number 3 cornerback from Jacksonville. But the names that I would watch in free agency for cornerbacks, I am interested to see, obviously, where Malcolm Butler goes. Apparently, the Lions are the team showing the most interest, with the Saints close by. Then you have Tremaine Johnson. Haven't heard his name at all. Like, I don't know if he's asking for too much money, but I have not heard his name pop up tied up to any team. One player that I would be interested seeing his contract is Morris Claiborne. Claiborne he's flashed as a shutdown corner at times, but he's also looked really bad at times. Like, I feel like if he goes to a team or a coach that can get the most out of him, I feel like he's going to be a very, very underrated signing.
I like it. What about Nate Solder? Are the Patriots going to re-sign him?
No, he's apparently gone. There was a reason he couldn't be franchise tagged by them. It was something in his contract saying they couldn't do it.
It's a big deal, man. Yeah. That is a big deal that he's gone.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing is, like, I did hear his name rumored somewhere. I can't remember as of right this moment. But no, apparently the Patriots, I haven't heard anything about him going back to the Patriots. So as of right now, I would assume he goes elsewhere. And he might be towards the end of the line, but he's still a very, very, very solid offensive tackle.
You know who should sign him is the Browns. If they want to make noise, go get him.
That's actually the team I heard tied to it. Yes.
Ooh,
yes.
Really?
Because people were, it was in our Slack chat. Michael, he's one of the guys we work with. He was saying that he's worried that Joe Thomas is going to retire because he's hearing that the Browns were talking with Nate Solder.
I probably read that and it was like subliminal messaging. Like I was.
Yeah, no, it's possible, but yeah, no, it makes sense.
I thought it was my idea.
Well, I mean, it makes sense trying to prepare for that, but they also need a right tackle. So I don't know if either Joe Thomas or Nate Solder can move over to the right side. But yeah, that's definitely, if they were to sign Solder, it would definitely bring some attention to Thomas and whether or not Thomas is going to play again.
All right, Tags, one final question before we end today's show. Where's Carlos Hyde going to go?
I'm going to stick with the Colts. There's some people saying that the Browns are a potential landing spot for him, but I'm sticking with the Colts. I feel like the Colts have enough money. I feel like they shouldn't use a pick, like a draft pick, on the running back position. So I feel like landing him and Marlon Mack, that could be a good 1-2 combo.
I like it. Those are both really good fits, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, man, that's all for today's show. And for those of you listening at home, it was fun being back. Thanks for listening to our show. And remember, the sponsor of today's show was RX Bar. You can get 25% off your first order. Try the blueberry. Visit rxbar.com/fantasypros and enter the promo code fantasypros at checkout. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening. Enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.